I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
This is no democracy. It is a dictatorship. I am the law. If you survive camp, you will be on the team. If you survive.
You are arrogant, hot-tempered, and entirely too bold. I like that.
All right, welcome back. You guys, what a mess today. So many technical issues, but I'm joined now by Lisa London. Lisa, thank you so much for being so patient with me and for, as always, for volunteering your time to come on my show and talk about sports, fantasy football. And today we're going to be talking about our matchup this weekend, Tennessee Titans and Miami Dolphins. Both 1-3, neither one apparently going anywhere. So I'm very excited, to talk about that. And I am actually to get your thoughts on the Dolphins. And as always, it's such a pleasure to talk to you. So thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's always fun coming on.
Well, again, I sincerely apologize for all the issues, but fortunately we've got everything fixed now, and so we're going to go ahead and get started. It's interesting times in fantasy football. I am a very, very, very sad Jamal Charles owner. I've got to make.
I am among them too.
Are you? Well, I've got to make some plans to replace him. But before we get to that and get to the art of the trade and how to work the waiver wire, let's talk a little bit about the Monday night football games. I had given up. I thought that the Steelers just looked awful. And, their offenses has been a concern. Mike Vick got the job done, except that, they weren't able to beat the Baltimore Ravens. They did come back late in the fourth quarter. A lot of controversy about the end of that game with the missing time and what have you. But I am just not I like Mike Vick. I know that he's got the issues that everybody wants to talk about. He is an exciting player. He can be an exciting player, but he's not the same guy that he was, 10 years ago. And so there's definitely some concerns. How are you feeling about the Steelers' offense?
I want Ben Roethlisberger back, please.
I know.
Can we please bring Ben back? As far as the socio-political issues, I generally ignore those. I mean, if you're going to go into those, there's a lot farther things you can go into than somebody who's already done their time for something.
Exactly.
And shown remorse.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and
as opposed to some other
Vic,
guys, right?
You're right, exactly. My problems with Vic have everything to do with the fact that he's literally killing the fantasy value of some of the best fantasy players there are, except for Le'Veon Bell, who is actually, I think, everything proof.
Yeah.
I love Le'Veon Bell. I love him. And but the rest of the team, I mean, yes, you could get bigger games out of Martavis Bryant this week, or Darius Harry because it can throw really, really, really far. But overall, it's been ugly. It was an ugly game.
I had already moved on from Marcus Wheaton. I think I do own him in some best ball leagues, so yay for me there. But it's really scary. Antonio Brown is a fantastic player, but right now his fantasy value is pretty questionable.
Yes, he definitely went from must start to you're still starting, but now he's moved down from your wide receiver 1 to your wide receiver 2, and sometimes he's even coming in as your wide receiver 3 as far as points go. Yeah. So when he's scoring points where his points are putting him that low, and you build your team around. I mean, there are worse losses. As somebody who had teams built around Jamal Charles and Jordy Nelson in one and Des Bryant and Jordy Nelson in another, there are worse cases than being an Antonio Brown owner right now.
Yeah.
But it hurts, because if you took Antonio Brown, you either spent a lot of money in an auction or took him in a very high pick, since he was going top 3 usually. And he's killing you right now. Hopefully Big Ben will come back soon, and that'll get the team on track. That was just a sad fantasy game, except for Gates, who came back and said, "Hey, I'm a thing."
I have Antonio Gates in a few best ball leagues. Unfortunately, I had to drop him in a redraft league because I just didn't have room to keep him on my roster. Nobody was biting on a trade because everybody else was in a similar situation. You know, when you have underperforming marquee guys like Jeremy Hill, C.J. Anderson, just to name a few, it's a real dilemma. We were talking about this last night. You know, typically I am a fantasy player who believes you play your marquee players unless they're injured, right? Unless they're missing a leg or whatever. But you've got so many
start
guys.
Your studs.
Yeah, right. But you've got so many guys underperforming, and I was really struggling in fantasy until about 2 weeks ago. I just started making drastic changes. You know, it's a long season, but in a way, it's a short season too. And my thought process is you can't wait too long. I mean, it's a fine line, right? But you can't wait too long because, first of all, other people are working the waiver wire too. You know, and if you want to get out there and get the cream of the crop, now you can trade, and that's kind of where I'm going here. Talk to us a little bit about the art of the trade versus how to work the waiver wire.
Well, I do. I mean, my article, I do a weekly article for Fantasy Sharks, and I do an article called Grinders and Gambles, and I deal with having to deal with teams that just due to the nature, for some reason, I seem to be cursed when it comes to fantasy teams. And my
I think so. I think I am too.
I think it's sort of become a running joke now as to it. So I get really used to having to move real fast once the season starts to fix my lineups. And so I have been patching teams since like week 2, week 3. So it comes down to when you're looking at it, you're going to look at your team. You're going to look at other rosters. At the beginning of the season, instead of looking necessarily at trades immediately, part of it is what can I get on the wire before I trade for something equal where I lose a piece? Can I pick up a piece without having to pay much for it?
Exactly.
And as you start the season, that's really where you're going to get your best values. This is where I had Gary Barnage starting week 2 in my article for pretty much every week until this week, where he finally just reached the point where he no longer qualifies because he's scoring enough points that he's out of where you'd be even reading my article. But people like that are the people you look for in the first few weeks, and you're still looking for. But there's going to be less and less of that as the season goes on. More people are going to be picking up guys that can fill in and grind or gambles like Hankerson and you know how much love that I gave Tammy preseason. Now that he's showing up, he should be pretty much disappearing off waiver wires as people have to fill in for tight end. That's when you start really having to look at trades. And trades are hard. Trades are difficult due to whether or not you guys value the players the same. People oftentimes get hurt feelings and get. I just had in a league where one of the teams apparently made a lowball offer to one of the other players who is a fantasy writer, and he sent one of the tactics you use when you get a lowball offer is send one back to be like, hey, and they took offense, and there was a dust up in my league where I had to come in as commission, be like, okay, enough. But it's one of those things where people get very, I can't believe they're offering me this, or and why do I trade? So some people will say, I always want to get the best player in a trade. And that's a good strategy to take, too, is I want to get the number one player. I want to get the best player out of the trade. But part of it is what do you need on your roster? I just traded away the best player in a trade in a team that I had built around Jordy Nelson and Des Bryant, among the several other players that ended up out. I actually had most of my team go out on me. So I had Gurley. And, I was doing the Gurley Mason stack at the beginning of the season on some of my teams.
Right.
And I had Gurley, who was just coming out, and I had to trade him off to get 2 or 3 players, and I ended up getting 3 players out of it that I could start weekly because I was scoring so low that the only way I had a chance to win is to add enough players. I couldn't, even with me writing to the depth that I write, and some of the articles, some of the guys that are on my articles are like guys like Chris Hogan. I mean, I have more obvious guys there too, but generally I'm going in on much deep. When you're patching a team and you're doing grinders and gambles, you're at the end of your wire, you're at the end of your bench, everything's thin, and even with that, I'm still looking at the waiver wire in this team and just like I have nothing. I don't know how to repair this team, and so I had to make the trade just to even represent on that team. And it's one of those things where you have to make the decision: do I want volume, or do I want a player? And then also part of it is trying to, what do you think is going to happen with a player versus what somebody else is? Because if you both think a player's great, then you're not going to have a trade made unless you're trading opposite positions. I need a running back, you need a receiver. And it's generally going to be a running back and a receiver because quarterback and tight end this year, you can really get off the wire. I mean, Jacob Tamby's still sitting out there on your wires because I'm sure there's leagues where Gary Barnidge is still sitting on wires. There is plenty of tight end talent out there this year that are grinders with upside, so you can go grab a tight end right now. The only league I don't have that in is a 16-man, 2 tight end league is the only league where you can't find a tight end on the wire. And, in fact, actually you can. I just got Jake Stoneburner right off of waivers. Nobody else grabbed him.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's funny. I'm not a big trader. I'm not a trader, you guys. Hashtag TRADER, right? No,
I know.
I'm just not, but I'm becoming more and more, because I wasn't comfortable with it. But I'm becoming more and more comfortable with it and more willing to do that as opposed to, working the waiver wire and whatever. Unfortunately, I've got access to resources like Lisa and Allie Fontana, who really helped me a lot as well. It's an interesting dilemma. Jamal Charles, the big guy right now, Charkandrick.
Yes.
I'll never be able to pronounce his name correctly. I might as well just give up. Chitty Bang Bang. Charlie Bang Bang is what they're calling him, right? But anyway, he's kind of the guy, the hot guy. Everybody's rushing out there to try to pick him up. Are you a believer or not?
I didn't. In fact, last week I actually put in a note into looking to the future to grab Niall Davis still. So this week when after the injury, I looked and they had Charkandrick starting and I was like, really? So I actually reached out and phoned a friend, or in this case texted a friend, and asked Matt Waldman.
Right.
As you know, if you're going to pretty much go with football knowledge, there's nobody that knows players better than Waldman. So I actually asked him, and they seem to be him and Sigmund Bloom, and they sort of seem to be up in the air on that backfield. So I asked him on a frustration level of 1 to Dave Weinstadt where we were at, and he said Sperano. So I have a feeling if what they're saying, it looks like it's just going to be a messy backfield. I genuinely don't know. I have no idea what's going on in Andy Reid's head. I've never understood what's going on in Andy Reid's head. I'm not sure anybody does.
Yeah.
And what I'm doing is, in the cases where I had Jamal Charles, I'm a proponent of handcuffs anyways, so I had Miles Davis already on any league I had Jamal Charles. I already had him. So what I'm doing in those leagues is, if I can, I'm getting Charkandrick West, but I just had him go in one of the early waivers that ran this morning for 67, almost, about 66, 67% of auction dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I'm going to put in that particular team. I think I'm okay enough that I wasn't going to put out that kind of money for somebody that I don't know is going to give me returns. There may be somebody I want to jump on later.
Yeah.
I mean, if this Matt Forte trade talk actually comes to a head, any league I don't have Jeremy Langford in that I can get him on, that's where I'm going to want to spend my waiver wires later. If he's not already sitting on my team, which is where he's going to end up probably on several. So this week, while everybody's grabbing at Kansas City guys, I'm grabbing at some other guys that I might be able to get a little bit cheaper to fill in, like Theo Riddick, who I've had on for the last couple of weeks. I've been like, hey, he's grinding. Like, just give me a grinder. It's going to give me 8 to 12 points with some upside. I know he's going to get the ball. He's not going to lose the game for me. Just give me that to fill in, and you do the best you can to just get somebody in there. Because I don't know what's going to go on with Kansas City. Kansas City could get really ugly really fast, or it could be the Travis Kelce show, and that is okay with me too.
Yeah. Yeah, it could definitely get ugly, and I'm with you. I just don't know. It's interesting in auction. I was shocked at how I put in a blind bid on James Jones, after the injury to Jordy Nelson, and of course Devontae Adams dinged up as well. And so, I put in what I thought was a very, very, very reasonable bid on James Jones. But people were spending almost all of their free agent bucks on him. So, you might have that opportunity to, because so many people did, spend, you might have that opportunity, maybe to,
and part of that's going to be gauging your league. It's just like trades. I mean, both of them are, you have to gauge your league and figure out, okay, what are they going to do? What kind of value, what kind of money? I have multiple leagues where I'm blind bidding in, and I have one I commish, which is a more casual dynasty league. And in that league, with the exception of one or two players, if I know there's like a couple of guys in that league that I know if they're going after a player, I got to bid high too, because they don't have a problem spending their cash. But they're not, the rest of the league, they're not that aggressive, so I don't have to worry. So on a lot of guys, I can be, out of $1,000 budget, I can put $10 on a guy and bring him home, because for some reason they're all saving their money. And other leagues that are far more complex and the players are far more competitive, you're not going to get anything for that money. You're just going to get outbid so quick. And part of that is a level of comfort, is if you spend all your money, can you still patch your team together?
Yeah.
Somebody you mentioned earlier, Ali Fontana. Ali Fontana can work a waiver wire. I was in the fishbowl in her division last year.
Oh yeah.
And I said I go deep, but I would go find a guy, and she would already had him 2 weeks before. She could spot talent.
She's amazing.
Yes. So she can work a wire. It's like nobody's business. And so it's who are you up against on how quick, Charkandrick West is not available at all in the fishbowl. I don't know if he's available in any division in the fishbowl. I haven't checked.
He's available in mine.
He is. Okay, so yeah, in mine, he's I don't remember who has him, but he's definitely not available. Guys go off, and that league it's a great league to look at. It as like a very competitive waiver wire and competitive blind bidding. And then there's that question of, and I have that question because my team in the fishbowl, for those of you who don't know, it's hashtag SFB360. It's run by Scott Fish. It's great I use the word in quotes, pro-am or writers fan fantasy football tournament. And in that league, it's a lot of fun to watch. But my team is a dumpster fire right now that I'm just trying to patch together. I think I'm 2-3. And try to work that wire and find guys, which is what I do every season with my teams after I break players. And trying to work that wire and fill in for the guys that are broken is hard when you're playing with a bunch of people who do this exact same thing. and it's interesting test on your wire skills, especially since there's no trades in that league. But it definitely teaches you how to. You are punished if you are not paying attention.
Yeah.
That's a league where if you're not on it and you're not paying attention. I mean, fortunately, I wasn't a Jamal Charles owner in that league, so because I let in the case of Kansas City, that is one place where I had a lapse of I was not paying attention over the last 2 weeks and did not see Charkandrick overpass Miles Davis, and I wasn't paying attention. I even, like I said, I wrote in the article, grab Niles as a future look. I had a couple of future looks in the article last week because I was doing a quarterly review, and for the most part, they actually all sort of either came to fruition or busted this week. So I guess I wasn't looking too far into the future because the other one was I think I had Derek Carrier there, who of course ended up doing okay. He got 3 catches and I think a touchdown, but obviously he's going to work out as a decent fill-in, low-end tight end. And then I said, like Jamal Charles, like, hey, grab the backup, just wrong backup. But yeah, I mean it's one of those things where it's important you work that wire. It's important to try and beat people to the players. But you also want to look for, you don't want to constantly be spending your money and rotating out players looking for, well, as you go after 1 week wonders. So sometimes you have to look at them outside the vacuum of the week and see if they're going to be a thing or not be a thing. The first week I touted Gary Barnidge. He, I think, got like 2 points. And I was like, ooh, I missed on that, but let's try him again this week against Oakland. and it worked out. And then after that, he seems to have had Josh McGowan's trust. Whereas there's a few guys I put up there that Percy Harvin is back to being Percy Harvin. Kenny Britt is definitely still Kenny Britt. Just in case anybody wanted to know, he's still Kenny Britt. There you go, crushing your fantasy hopes and dreams like you expect every year.
Yeah, and speaking of the Scotty Fishbowl League, I went out there. I have been doing, as I mentioned, major tweakage to my fantasy rosters, and I went out there last week. I got screwed because somehow my lineup didn't get set right, but I went out there, last week. And this was just simply on waivers, not blind bidding, and picked up Marcus Wilson and and Jared Aberderis. Because of the Devontae Adams deal, Ty Montgomery obviously is owned pretty much everywhere now. I had picked up Keith Mumphrey, the Houston Texans wide receiver, and also I went ahead and picked up Garrett Selleck because dropped Vernon Davis because I had Vernon Davis and Garrett Selleck has overtaken him, passed him up. So
I think I had Garrett Selleck as one of my grinders last week. So he should be still in there. Yeah.
So it is very interesting, and I'm glad that we're recording this, and no SFB players out there listening. Well, I'm kidding. Right?
If you're in my division, just move along. There's nothing to see here.
Yeah.
And I'm not going for anybody on the wire this week, so you guys don't need to either. Yeah, no,
pretty good. I'm pretty good in most of my leagues too. I'm going to have to replace Jamal Charles, obviously, in our league, the league that you and I are in.
Oh, right, yes.
Yeah.
That one's a tough one.
Yeah, it's a very tough one, and I'm going to make a tweak to a couple of other teams. Unfortunately, I only own Jamal Charles in that one league, and I had already made major tweaks, as I mentioned, so I'm pretty good. And outside of my best ball league, I won across the board last week. I won in every single of my leagues where you set your roster. So I was pretty and scored big, which is big, right? I mean that's the goal of the thing. So who are you looking at on the waiver wire? And let's talk about Ty God. Is Tyrod Taylor? It sounds like he's injured more seriously than they might be letting on.
I think he is. I think, unfortunately, which is because that's been a fun ride, and I think that may just suck the life right out of the Bills' fantasy offense. As as good as LaShawn McCoy is, and he's still good. I mean, I know he's injured and he's been banged up this season, and as good as Carlos Williams has shown, at least some of that comes from the fact that you got Tyrod Taylor as the quarterback. Now you have E.J. Manuel. So if there's ever a time to stack the box, and be able to play an aggressive defense, it's going to be against E.J. Manuel or whichever quarterback they can find whose passport is ready. Because apparently there was Twitter rumors that the Bills were going around checking on passport statuses of NFL quarterbacks that are free agents.
Yeah, I saw that.
So if they need to know a passport status for next week of a quarterback, that doesn't bode well, that they're not just looking at week 6 or already looking at week 7. They need somebody, even as a backup, that can be able to fly to London. So it gives me some concerns. It definitely, unfortunately, I have Sammy Watkins, who may be finally coming back, and not too much. And he's been sort of killing me this season. And it's sort of just going to, I think, crush all Bills shares. I have a feeling that the Buffalo Bills may turn right back into the old Buffalo Bills of old, where you really didn't want their fantasy shares unless you absolutely had to for most of the players. I think we're about to get that back, at least for a couple of weeks until Taylor's healthy. Because I think he's going to affect everybody across the board, and maybe even the defense if they have to stay on the field longer.
Mhm. Yeah, it's very, very, very sad. Not the big. I'm really pulling for E.J. Manuel, but you're definitely. And I see a lot of people out there, kind of rushing to pick him up. I'm not going to pick him up because I just don't think it's going to be the same offense.
I think I'm in super flexes, and I haven't even checked his availability in the super flexes.
Yeah.
That's. I mean, even in I'm in a 16-team super flex, and I think that may be the only league that E.J. Manuel is on the roster in right now. So it's. I mean, I'd rather go take a chance with Matt Castle and the Cowboys.
Yeah, right.
Point. I mean, at least there's somebody that can catch a ball there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Now, I still have Chris Hogan on my super gamble list of desperation grabs in super deep leagues because he was last season, he managed to pull out a few games, and he's a guy, I mean, that's Reggie Bush called him 7-Eleven when he was trying out with the Dolphins because he was always open. Mm-hmm. And he will get open, and in games where you got injured players and it looks thin, he's kind of a guy you can throw in. But he's a desperation. He's a bit like, if you're grabbing Chris Hogan, you're actually in the fishbowl with us. Mm-hmm. Is probably when you're grabbing Chris Hogan. Like that's a really thin waiver wire. Because pretty much every question of this guy or Chris Hogan, it's going to be whoever that guy is. But, I mean, there's still like in a pinch. I mean, but it might get to the point, depending on how bad the next couple of weeks go, where you can get higher value players off of the Bills as the Bills' offense sort of crumbles a little bit with the uncertainty, where you may be able to grab somebody like Carlos Williams with LaShawn McCoy back and Carlos Williams in concussion protocol and a short bench league. If the running game looks like it's terrible because of Manuel being in and they're jamming up the running game.
Right.
Somebody you could foresee in a short bench league, somebody cutting Carlos Williams because especially if it's not PPR. But even in PPR, I mean, I was using him. He was getting, when they were both playing, he was getting like 8 to 12 points a game. He was a grinder, and he was doing great as a grinder, like a wide receiver 2 or 3 that you can, or a running back 2 or 3 that you can put in and get your 8 points that you need, and you can gamble on some other guys because you're not getting a goose egg out of that position. And I could foresee somebody saying, okay, I don't have room for him, and just cutting him because it's a short bench league in redraft. And I could definitely see that's somebody where you see him go, you try and target him while everybody's grabbing the flavor of the week. As he falls, you're going to see people right now with all the bye weeks coming. You're going to see people start cutting some people that might have some value. And he's one of those guys where if he's jammed up in concussion protocols for the next week or two, he could fall on a. LaShawn McCoy is going to come in, and I'm sure he's going to run okay because he's still LaShawn McCoy, and you might be able to grab Carlos Williams, and he may be the guy that ends up because LaShawn McCoy may pull a hammy again or something else because he's still LaShawn McCoy, and you may be able to use Williams later on in the season. Or they may be used in tandem to give McCoy a break. And even when he was being used in tandem, he was still somebody you could fill in. So, I mean, some of the worst bye weeks have yet to come. I think it's like week 9 is really bad this year for fantasy. There's certain weeks where they just load up on your fantasy starters. And so that may be where a guy like Carlos Williams, all of a sudden, his 10 points is the difference between winning and losing. So I'm fading Bills in fantasy, but don't be blind to them if you can get them at the proper value.
Yeah, I was able to pick up Dion Lewis off waivers.
Oh my goodness!
I know, right? I was
okay. Whoever cut him, I tell people when I see this. Okay, the appropriate protocol is you should at very least send a thank you card. If you can, and you know where they are, a fruit basket is not unheard of. I mean, really, for Dion Lewis, and like one of those little cute cookie baskets. Like, thank you for giving me. I have a team right now that Dion Lewis is pretty much. I picked him up at the very beginning, preseason, in like August or something, and grabbed him. And he right now has been the difference between winning and losing. I love that guy. I'm going to send him a fruit basket soon. I'm going to he's going to be like, who's this strange woman sending me fruit baskets?
I know. I was like, y'all, I'm going to send you my favorite George Clooney gift. I was like, look, is he out there? You know, and I jumped on that, and I was like, boom, you know, it was like,
oh yeah,
clicking. It was so crazy. We got to talk about Dolphins Titans. I could talk fantasy.
Yes.
Listen, you guys, I could talk fantasy football with Lisa all day. We got to talk Dolphins Titans. They both suck. I know that you have some thoughts on your Miami Dolphins team, the firing of Joe Philbin, which was long overdue, and maybe a little bit about their quarterback situation.
I do. Yes, as far as Joe Philbin going, that roaring sound you guys heard over the last week was the sound of cheers in the South Florida area.
Everybody, yeah.
But unfortunately, it seems like my Dolphins are still dysfunctional because if there's anything that exists to crush my hopes and dreams, it truly is the Miami Dolphins. That's the one thing in life that's their purpose is every year to get really excited. I'm actually wearing my Tannehill jersey today, which is fun because I'm now going to attack Ryan. I'm going to criticize politely.
She's going to have some
Ryan
words about
Tannehill. So, I mean, obviously, obviously, there was a little, little post up. Anybody hear anything interesting about the Dolphins last week? Besides the firings, there was that issue in practice that everybody heard about with Ryan Tannehill apparently berating some of the practice squad players for playing full speed when he was trying to do a walkthrough. And what was said or not said was a different. I mean, it doesn't really matter because the real things to take out of this is two things. I mean, one, Dante Stallworth pointed out that when Tom Brady would get picked off, he would pay people in their practice squad when he would get picked off. They would actually get a bonus for picking him off because that's what you do. What concerns me more?
You got to kind of be careful about that, though. I mean, it can be,
I get that he's trying to do a walkthrough and he's trying to slow everything down to get everybody on the same page, and he was upset. But what really bothered me was, one, the practice squad trophy jibe, which is real, even if the money thing isn't, that he did say. But more importantly, afterwards, his response to the quotes, like that we have, quote, leaks in the Dolphins, and he was more concerned about the leaks in the Dolphins than the actual incident. And you're the leader. Like, you have this whole team on your shoulders, or you should be taking this whole team on your shoulders. I mean, Lord knows it wasn't on Joe Philbin's shoulders. So this whole snitches freaking out about the locker room, if there's that kind of concern, it brings me back to like when all the incognito stuff came out. If there's still this concern where you're like, oh, you're talking outside of the locker room, and that's one, if you're that concerned about this kind of stuff getting out, maybe you don't have the respect of the players, which is a problem. But
right.
two, why are you not concerned about the image that you're giving to your fellow players and whatever static there may be between you and your team, including the practice squad?
Mm-hmm.
And focusing on being a better quarterback. I mean, for all the terrible things that have been said and can be said about Jameis Winston for social political debates at another time, when you look at him as a charismatic character, I mean, his personality, he's just known for being charismatic, and he's a leader. Even when he's terrible, he's a leader. And, I mean, last week, I don't remember who hit him. Somebody from the other team hit him hard, like just got him good. And he got up, and he actually walked up to the guy and gave him 5 for doing such a good job on the tackle in the middle of the game. That's the kind of guy that'll just stand up and be like, good job, nice tackle. I still got the run. Nice tackle. That kind of charisma, that kind of, I mean, even with all of his terrible things that he does, and hopefully he'll, for Tampa's sake, or allegedly does, that hopefully for Tampa's sake, he will not continue. He at least in the locker room seems to have the charisma and the backing of the team.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, when you talk about players, I mean, when you talk about like somebody who's great in the guys that are great in the locker room, Tom Brady, but even more, Peyton Manning. Players love Peyton Manning. He's supposed to be a jokester. He's supposed to be a great guy, but he also, can keep control and keep order.
Yeah.
When I see Tannehill sitting and complaining to the media about people snitching, I'm like, first of all, that should be in the locker room. Like, you shouldn't be talking to the media about people snitching. That's, if you have an issue with leaks, deal with it in-house. Why is the coaching staff not dealing with this in-house? Why are you not dealing with this in-house? Why are you putting it out there for the whole world to see? And then that leaves a bigger concern of, is the Dolphins' locker room still the mess that it was if we actually fixed everything? With that, I mean, we still have hope. We have a new coach, a tougher coach, a coach that hopefully is going to come in there and clean up, at least as an interim coach.
He's done some interesting things. I'll just say that. One of the things that's curious to me, I was looking at stats between the Dolphins and the Titans. Ryan Tannehill has thrown the ball 171 times. That is a lot.
Yes. Now, how many of those were actually caught by anybody?
Well, yeah, I mean, only 97 of them have been caught.
I think I saw somebody post up on Twitter last week or on Facebook. Yes, on Facebook somebody had posted up that Homeland Security has put a no entry onto Ryan Tannehill because they were afraid he was going to come back and overthrow the country.
Oh, gosh. No, that's kind of funny. I can't find that. That's kind of funny.
So I thought that was pretty good. So, yeah, I mean, I'm hoping. Look, I'm hoping that the tight ends coach is taking over, and you just spend a bunch of money on Jordan Cameron. Use him, and then go ahead and grab his backup because, as we know, Jordan Cameron usually lasts about 4 games before he gets a concussion or something. So he's made a paper mache. So go ahead and grab that backup because he might be useful. And maybe, I don't know, it would be really interesting to see, do we actually get to see Lamar Miller run? Because
37 carries. 37 carries.
There is something that's got. I look at Lamar Miller and I'm like, I mean, I'm not not a fangirl, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't get why he's not running more. He seems to be very good at this football running thing.
Yeah.
I would think that you hired him to fill that job. It might be logical to allow him to do so and stop, just randomly handing the job to other people. So it's interesting. So I'm curious if they'll finally let Miller run. Start using a shorter game because, I mean, Ryan Tannehill, he's still working on that long ball.
Listen to this. Ryan Tannehill has thrown the ball 43 more times than Marcus Mariota and only has 60 more passing yards.
Yep, that sounds about right. So
that is ridiculous.
And
it's
ridiculous.
And
we have the same questionable running back. Like ours is more, Dolphins are more of a talent issue, or lack of using talent issue, whereas yours is more of a, I don't really know what's going on there. I got nothing.
Well,
and your Titans running game of Bishop, Sankey, Andrews. Hey, what's McCluster doing this week?
Yeah, really? I mean, yeah. And they traded for Terrence West. You know, he's only had 16 carries. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, just to have him hang out. Yes, as a Bishop Sankey owner, that's one that's just, that one's a rough one. So I expect it to be an interesting game. One way or the other for the Dolphins. They're either going to come back hopefully with some focus and maybe some revisions to the way the game was playing and a little more leadership in the locker room, or they're just going to continue falling apart, and we're just going to have, another, for everybody who's lived down here, you kind of get used to the Dolphins meltdowns.
So
usually what happens is we win a set of games, we'll win 3 or 4 games, and then we'll go back to meltdown mode.
Who do you think is going to be the better tight end this week, Jake Stoneburner or Jordan Cameron?
Jordan Cameron. I think Jordan Cameron finally gets used. I actually pushed him up in my rankings. I think Jake Stoneburner is just somebody to grab and stash in a deeper league.
Okay.
And I'm taking a really deeper league because I do always have a couple of gambles and a couple of grinder tight ends that are usually pretty far down there. So when you're getting that far down, like I said, it's because you're in a competitive league where there's really nothing out there.
Well, I'm a pretty sad Delaney Walker owner right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say your love for Delaney Walker, your undying love of Delaney Walker this preseason. And I think it was well earned. It's just unfortunately not being well used right now.
Yeah.
But he might bounce back. In fact, he might bounce back this week.
Yeah.
So it could be a thing.
The Titans are atrocious against the tight end, so I would have more.
I mean,
so I would have more
you got
faith.
Fasano behind him, so
I would have more faith in playing a Dolphins tight end than I would play.
Oh no, yeah. This week, I actually like Jordan. I think that maybe this is. I mean, the fact that they're in week 5 and they had to move. They're taking the practice squad and going to half speed in the first place, which is right there is a question. It's week 5. Why are you doing a walkthrough so slow? Unless maybe you're looking at changing the playbook some.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't have to be walking through this plays so slow in the first place and constantly having this where nobody's on the same page, unless you're putting in players that aren't getting as much usage or now starting to get usage. And I mean, I actually just got a text from somebody who just asked me, Rashard Matthews for Parker, and that's an interesting one that I don't know what the I don't know what the answer is going to be, because part of me I definitely put in this week grab Parker if he's been cut. Rashard Matthews was well liked by Tannehill, I believe.
Yeah.
And so he's managed to stick around, and I have him on a few rosters, and he still could be good, but you could see them starting to really, I mean, at this point with where we're at in the season, it makes sense for them to start putting in Parker more,
right?
Cameron more. Hey, maybe give the ball. All of the criticisms that there have been since the beginning of the season is you have these players, let's use them. I could definitely see that being where you start seeing Parker come in more, and you start seeing
I owned
younger
Rashard
guys
Matthews.
Get a chance.
I owned Rashard Matthews as a fill-in for a week, and he didn't do anything.
Right.
Excuse me. Yeah, so I moved on. I had just had better options anyway. I just needed him for that 1 week. So it is definitely going to be. And you want to give me a prediction?
I want to give you a prediction.
Mm-hmm. Besides pain, drinking, and crime.
I feel like, is going fetal is that a prediction? Can we make that a thing?
Yeah, let's make it a thing.
Yeah, no, I actually think, I think it's one of those things where it goes one of two ways. either both defenses have a really good game, or I could see it being sort of a bounce back. So I'm gonna go with I'm gonna even give our defense some props. So I'm gonna be super optimistic for my Dolphins and go with Dolphins 28 and Tennessee 21, 22.
Okay, I would have said
28 with all the 2-point conversion stuff.
Maybe 28-17 or something like that. Yeah,
right.
I think.
I could see that. I could also just see you guys just trouncing all over us. I mean, that's always an option.
Yeah.
So it's always an option.
It's always an option.
I always keep my hopes low.
Well, it's always easier that way. That way you don't get disappointed. Lisa, thank you so much for joining me. Tell everybody out there where they can find you and find your awesome fantasy expertise.
Oh, you got it. Thank you for having me. And you can find me on FantasySharks.com. I write a weekly article called Grinders and Gambles. So go ahead and check out the site. It's a great site, lots of fantasy stuff.
Yeah, and she's excellent, so definitely check it out. Thanks again, Lisa. Have a great day, and good luck this weekend.
Thank you. You too.
All right, bye-bye.